So we have to give the gold back to the gods. That's how we do it. That's how we fix the problems with sin. You see, to sin is to sine, or to cause sine waves of electric pressure that are not given the proper intent. And so it's subject to all the consequences of polarity. Energy flows out and, it's returned as the balance is corrected. It's a very deep mystery. But we were taught about gold to circumvent all that. See, there was a legend about a time in our history so long ago, veiled behind a curtain of mystery so deep that to penetrate it meant to die, because the knowledge of it would forever alter you. See, before the deluge, for Noah's Ark, right? Supposedly it had never rained, and that's what had tripped the people out, is that this man ran around like a crazy person explaining to people that the water was going to fall out of the sky, and it was ludicrous to them. See, if you can believe that these people found it ludicrous that water would fall from the sky, then you have to accept the fact that they were unfamiliar with the concept of rain. How do you suppose that was? It's because the magnetic web of the planet was stable. You hear about Noah, and he has many incarnations, and there are many stories about this Noah. Stories from ancient cultures who survived a deluge, like Utnapishtim and Gilgamesh, I believe. You see, it allowed for the land to hold its heat in a very special way, the earth. It's complicated. Well, the magnetic web of the planet was stable. There's an alchemical quality of gold that stabilizes the torus. It's the product of the philosopher's stone, the codex to which is actually the Zodiac. And its secret is that it provides the perfect angular dimensions for light to express itself through, for heat to distribute itself through, for sound to express a geometry through, and for light to seek equilibrium. But there's a reason it requires the three primary colors, the red, yellow, and blue, as well as black and white. You have to mix them in this perfect way. The primary colors, which is important, that's telling, they form a trinity in the rainbow. You see, at its apex, it is the meridian point. It's the perfect position for the expression of the 3 points. And with 3 points, one to keep equilibrium, you have homeostasis of this power trine. It's the trine. It's the quality of 3, 6, 9. Forms a perfect trine. It also falls on Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, which correlate to red, yellow, and blue. And they're the 3 fire archetypes, or the 3 angles of the most potent force on a sine graph. It also shows up in our wiring as the perfect configuration for electromotive force to efficiently utilize voltage to produce torque. So I'm going to step the weirdness up a notch. But the photon is alive. And without going into too much depth, because the majority of my work is literally based on this, it's how God is literally everywhere, painting reality through the archetypes, and how God remains hidden and silent, observing, justifying, judging, correcting inequity. God shares every experience with you and through you. It's just like the cells in your body. They experience everything that you experience. You subconsciously experience everything they do as they evolve and keep you running. Boom. All right, that said, the photon is both awareness incarnate and has produced Adam, first of its creations, to name all things through the periodic table. This is why in quantum physics, The photon responds to itself through observation, and it takes a quantum state between the observer and the observed. So it creates a moment in time, an event, a sine wave, which is still a particle. So you have the particle and the wave. And in the occult, they know that the attention produces a subtle current through which the intent can be channeled to set a vibration in a space-time or time-space that'll produce quantum effects that they refer to as magic. And it's magic with a K, not a C. This stuff's real. So they say where attention goes, power flows. So boom, I'm not going to go into that now. On to the next point. I have to keep myself focused or I tend to veer way, way off. But I can go into that in another, because that's a very interesting, that's about manifestation and the use of magic, ceremonial magic. But it's basically the direction, it's about directing the flow of light, directing the flow of attention, expansion and contraction. It's just about knowing the primordial way and the way it moves, the way it expresses itself. It has a behavior and it responds to itself. So all constructs of the living photon actually hold an intelligence, and it's based on their patterns, which should determine their basic gender, and that they are either female, which is magnetic, receptive, receiving force as a vessel, and containing it to transmute it or to produce with it, or they're male, which is, that they channel or emit force, they broadcast it, they penetrate with it, or subdue by it. So protons and electrons in pursuit give the atom a positive charge, which is masculine, or negative charge, which is feminine, or a balanced charge, which is neutral. Use your imagination. On to the next point. So higher intelligences are real. They're constructed of the photon, which is awareness, and in a balanced state of the the expression of the elements. So you have forces and forms expressing a playout of heat or stress contained within a form. So when a vessel has a geometry that's complex enough to contain that heat or use it in homeostasis, it becomes living. So there are all sorts of spirit creatures from matter existing in different phases, different vibrational levels, from literally a state of atomic rest down to the material level and beyond. So you have these overlapping fields of geometry, which are the dimensions, and within each of those dimensions, the light expresses itself in different ways, takes different shapes, but it produces life nonetheless, because the qualities of the archetypes permeate through all the dimensions. So that said, the planets are expressions of these forces that captured within a magnetic field generated by our sun and the material that gives them their form. So on the plane they exist currently, the one that we're experiencing them through, the torus expresses itself apparently as a sphere, but its electromagnetic signature is no different as it exists as a part of a fractal of itself on a higher level. So all intelligent creatures are connected with the source, the photon, and in a unique geometry that permits for these forces to exist ubiquitously and operate in a quantum state and a mechanical state by way of resonance, and in the entirety of that field from top to bottom, which is why you have as above, so below. You have, within that field of time, you have the expression of what we call the gods. They're primordial forces which permit for the expression of voltage to penetrate the void and produce life. They're literally resistance, voltage, and ampacity. So you have resistance, which is Saturn, Enlil, El, Father Time, Odin. To the Chinese, the Jade Emperor, he's Dianguan, Emperor of Earth, who represents law, punishment, authority, architecture, that which restricts the flow of light and sets limitations. Forces concentration, forces a focus to the light for it to master its way to expression. Its color is black. It's the shadow. It's where the light goes, where it's stuck. Archetypally, it refers to power because it's a concentration of the light through which it has to step itself up to master its limitations for proper expression. So it's resistance, and you have voltage, which is Jupiter, Enki, Zeus, Jehovah, the abundance giver, Thor, Tianguan, Emperor of Heaven, who represents like life force, vital force, magic, luck, an abundance of anything, an abundance of power, archetypal masculine force of God, the electricity, vibration, power, something that grants wishes or provides abundance. It provides, it's the provider. So archetypally it represents the big daddy, the father figure. And then you have ampacity, which is Uranus, Baal, Marduk, Balder, Prometheus, Xianguan, Emperor of Water, who controls the rivers, sets the balance between voltage and resistance to permit for the overcoming of power or the overcoming of resistance. It'll shift to allow the dark to overcome the light or vice versa. It's the arbitrator of, the limitation, whether it persists or whether it is overcome. So it steps up the amps or steps them down. It's on an oscillating thing as the planets orbit. So these forces represent how power assumes its primordial functions. From it, you get laws of thermodynamics like Ohm's law, you get hermetic laws of polarity, rhythm, etc. But all that said, these archetypes want for there to be justice as well as dreams on this planet seen a flourish, abounds. But in order for their subtle current, the current of their expression, to manifest, they need a stable, an extremely stable magnetic field. And then they will incarnate in some way. I'm not entirely sure how that is, but you can read through any sorts of literature and know how they actually descend here on Earth. They have an intelligence that can take a shape because that which is above can influence that which is below, and we can go into ourselves just as they can go into themselves, expressing their qualities in an intelligent way through a geometry that we perceive to be archetypal forms. A human form or the form that represents the qualities that they project, that they broadcast into the, how like Zeus represents the eagle and whatnot. And Leo represents the lion. It's about pride and a lifting of the passion, that which produces life force or steps up the life force. So if we restore the superconductive quality of the magnetic web, it should permit for all the archetypes and Gaia to express themselves through. It'll correct the imbalances in all toroidal fields, all magnetic fields, even ours, within our cells and in our magnetic centers, and restore literally heaven on earth. This is what they're talking about when they refer to the shift to the higher dimensions and the rebuilding of Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem, the return to the garden, the ascension, all that jazz, the apocalypse, fifth dimension, all that. The nexus, from Star Trek. It involves reactivating the pyramids even to produce the counterweight, I believe, that'll magnetically correct the equator. As they heat up, they become more dense, I do believe. And they're platonic, and then there are other things that are required for them to run and resonate properly with, gold and monoatomic and I believe maybe even the Ark of the Covenant and a special pattern of keys that maybe start them up or use them to produce things like effects on time and space. And that's a subject for totally something else for another time. But, I believe in their, they being the platonic shape, the tetrahedron, they have an influence on matter. It's their geometry. Everyone knows that there's a subtle measurable flow of current or magnetic field alive at the pyramids. It's because of their geometry. There's a reason the upright delta refers to the triple flame. It's power incarnate, and if produced perfectly, its quality is gold, and it'll stabilize a magnetic field. So, the planet Gaia She has her own Torus. And even in her dormant state, she's powerful enough and aware enough to interact with the sun and to keep her children alive. She's growing weaker because her field is weakening. See, we have to return the gold to her by way of the field, to return her consciousness. So it's weird that someone else knows this, and they've left us clues like in our Disney movies, music videos. It's like the prepares for the truth. It's like the Jackson 5 video. The imagery alone is pretty telling. But the constant coming together of the elements to produce gold, or quintessence. At the end of that video, if you watch it all the way through to the end, there are two different videos. There's one that, sort of cuts off short, and it cuts off because the song is kind of going off and it veers off into the rest of the video. And the person didn't want to, go 4 minutes further into the video to show you a part of the video that contains no song. But then there's like a 9-minute version that goes all the way to the end where you actually see something happens, and the people they kind of freak out, but just at the last moment, like doom is turned back, and it shows the earth suspended in a torus, a golden field, or golden torus. It's in a golden glow. And the beginning even tells you the story of the deluge, when we descended into time through the rainbow, through the bandwidth that we experience our polarity, our experience by. The rainbow, the Roy G. Biv spectrum that seems to build and contain us in a prison state, suspended beneath this rainbow through which we experience our reality. It's like a jail, or maybe just a fracture in time where we experience life in a way that rehabilitates us, teaches us things, how to love, so that we can raise our consciousness and reestablish the will of heaven on earth. Once upon a time, things were different, and they're telling you this story in the video of Jackson 5, that things were different. We didn't exist in such a polarized state, suspended on the cross between elemental dichotomies. We saw the colors, we saw the entire spectrum. See, now we're constantly subject to the shifting nature of dichotomies and of elements, due to the introduction of polarity and force through sin, or by the emission of sine waves, not understanding how to transmute that force and turn it inward through inner awareness and inner consciousness. See, you have movies like The Fifth Element. They had the 5 elements covered, but then the 5th element needed to feel love. She needed passion to activate. See, passion is the quality of Leo, which is the quintessence. The yes. You have 3 modalities of fire, really. Aries is like the first gear, which is go, Then Leo is like second gear, which is yes. And then Sagittarius is like third gear. It's like hooray, or holy shit. So there's this balance between the two, which is kept by Leo. It's the golden point between the two, the shifting point of the trine, the balance of the trine. So Leo also archetypally represents the sun, refers to the sun. It's the highest point on the sign graph and represents the heartbeat. For reasons I'm not going to go into, it's deep, and I've done this in other videos if you want to go through them, but its occult quality is gold. It's the perfection of force. So it stabilizes fields by stabilizing the flow of force. So by returning it to the atmosphere, it literally restores the consciousness of the central, solar consciousness of the system, the sun itself, right here on the earth. It restores consciousness and ego awareness to the earth. It's like a direct connection with the Messiah. It's the coupling of their archetypal values: consciousness, the sun, and the earth, the Torus, abundance, the feminine receptive force that receives the will of the sun, receives the power, and it uses it to create archetypal fertility. Between the two, it's like gold on gold. It's the golden position in the system for life to create, and the gold of the sun, which is the perfection of force. It's the perfection of force and form. So, nothing really. It's It's deep, you know, and you want to go into the sun. You know, if you want to know more about the sun, I mean, it's the photon. It's what the photon is doing. It's what the light is doing through it. That's what it's about. It's you know, nothing commands greater focus or attention than the sun. It guides attention. It guides awareness. It gives all cycles, all atomic cycles, their rhythm. It is the rhythm setter. Its magnetic pattern is what sets all the rhythms for all the cycles. So y'all looking for a Messiah? You give the gold back to the gods, and you'll get it, and more. I think I recall a scripture when they mentioned people, would be throwing their gold and silver into the streets. And it does us no good here. See, in greedy hands, it's not used properly for the current or the currency it represents, which is based on labor and time, or flowing force captured in material form. See, down here it produces debt and inequity. You put the gold back where it belongs, where it can benefit everyone and in a perfect way. It's manna, you see. And with the proper application of its phases, I believe it brings together its quadruplicity. And as a monoatomic solid, it's in its earth form, earth and air, which is, earth, which is sort of form, and air, which is friction. And they're really an expression of force and form. And within each expression, you have the seeds of their opposite. So you have earth and air, which is force and friction, and then, and that's in its monoatomic state. And then that's when it, gold holds heat very well, like a perfect holder of heat. It has no magnetic quality. But in its colloidal liquid state, it's like water and fire. It's water, which is flow, and fire, which is flux. So altogether, you get flow, flux, form, and friction. Perfect combination of the modalities of force and form. You bring them together, and you have all four phases of matter balanced in a golden state, represented by golden material expressions of perfection, and then moved by a configuration of magnets representing the delta, the golden motivator of force, and a delta or a Y-frame configuration to give them torque. And together that might actually produce something spectacular. Now, I know that in the atmosphere, it should allow Gaia to produce and maintain her own magnetic field. It would explain so many things, so many mysteries. I'm curious to find out, aren't you?